Welcome to TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, change-makers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled every week to bring you different thought leaders from around the world, and today I can't wait for all of you to get to know and learn from Darrin. Darrin, thank you so much for being here. Kind of tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, absolutely, Todd. Thanks for having me on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it. So I'm Dr. Darrin Peppard. I associate as a recovering high school principal, to be honest with you. Very, very lifelong educator, like so many of your listeners. Started as a middle school teacher, honestly. Finished my career as a superintendent. Now I work with schools and districts all over the country to help leaders, to help teachers, to help everybody just be a little bit more clear, be a little bit more intentional, and to really walk in their purpose. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, a traveler of the road to awesome.
I love it. Well, one of the things that you and I had talked about before, and kind of the guiding light for this conversation today, is managing being a great leader while also feeling like your entire school is burning down and you don't know what to do next. And so I know
Right.
You work with a lot of people over that. And so obviously at some point in your career, you must have realized, you know what? This is a little bit too out of control. Like, I need things in place. I need to do things a certain way. I need to change this or that. And it must have become really important to you for you to now be able to work with others. So what did that journey look like for you for this whole idea of firefighting and constantly feeling like we're on the defense instead of the offense? Tell me a little about where that passion came from you.
Yeah, so the story actually begins sitting in the interview chair. So I'm interviewing for the high school principal job. I had been an assistant in that building for a handful of years. I was in charge of curriculum, instruction, that kind of stuff. So I was the instructional leader, really, of that school. And at the end of the interview, when they ask, hey, what questions do you have of us? I asked the people at the table, what would you expect of me as the principal? And Todd, I can't tell you what 11 of the 12 said, but I can tell you the superintendent said, Darrin, I need you to be the instructional leader of the school. Well, I already was. And so then I thought, well, does that mean keep doing what I was doing plus take on all this other? And so I made the same mistake many other leaders make. I thought, okay, I got to be the superhero. So I put on the cape every day and I went to solve everybody's problems and, be the smartest person in every room. And it's not sustainable. Late in my second year, I'm forever grateful. One of my really good mentors, he was the HR assistant superintendent of the district, and he came over and just had a pretty good heart-to-heart with me about, Darrin, you're way behind. You're not getting the things done that you need to get done. Just tell me what in the world is going on. And that's when it kind of hit me. Like, wow, I'm just running around like a crazy person. And the next year, they brought in a leadership coach for me, and his first day on my campus was very much the same thing. Walk in the front door, stop by a student, stop by a teacher, stop by a student, stop by a teacher, like the whole thing, right? And about an hour and a half into my day, my coach pulled me aside and he said, Darrin, do you want to be a firefighter or do you want to be a leader? I think it's time for you to make a decision. And from that point on, he really helped me, one, kind of get my head above water and get out of that just crazy mess that we all live through as building administrators early in our career. But he also helped me put systems in place. He helped me, really look at the things we were doing, help me understand that there are things that as the building principal, only I can do. And then there are things as the building principal that a lot of other people can do. And I need to empower and let them do those things instead of trying to do it for them. And over a period of time, it transformed me. I went from the guy who was running around like his hair was on fire. And I know that's funny. If you're watching this, I don't have hair. So, but that's kind of what it was like, right? And working with a coach completely transformed me. And honestly, it's why I do what I do. I want to pay that forward for as many leaders as I possibly can.
I love that. And, I've heard several people just recently talk about the power of having that coach in their career to really guide them in the midst of all that insanity going on. And so you have leaders today who are listening to this conversation going, Darrin, I can totally relate. Like, I feel like I'm trying to be everything to everyone with the superhero cape, and it's not working the way I want it to. But at this point, Darrin, I don't even know, like, what to start with. Like, I don't even know the first step to take because everything feels overwhelming. So if there's that leader today listening to this going, can you at least help with the first step? Like, as long as I can get moving, I can get it, but I don't know where to start. What would you tell them?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. It's one I hear frequently. So I would say this, I think this is how I typically would answer this question is number one, you've got to get clear. You've got to gain some clarity around number one, what is your role? Number two, what is it that you see as your compelling vision for your school? And by that, I don't mean the vision and mission and that stuff we do in the strategic plan. Those are important. But I mean, like, think about 9 months from now. What do you think is possible for your school? That should be what that compelling vision is. Right. Just this is what we can accomplish this year. The more clear you get about those things, the more then you can start to take a look at, am I aligning my time, my communication, my work with those things that I say that I believe is possible? When we're just going through the motions, kind of in survival mode, my number one goal is to make it to Friday kind of thing, then it's not going to get better. So the first thing really is getting clear about what it is that's really important to you and what you think is possible. And there's a series of questions I like to ask leaders, specifically with the instructional piece, because I think sometimes, no, I'm going to back up on that. Nearly all the time, when we're stuck in the fire, when we're running around crazy, none of it has anything to do with teaching and learning. It's all the operational stuff. Mm-hmm. It's building use and parents and on and on and on. So I like to go back to instruction because, as I like to say, what we can't keep doing is sacrificing the important on the altar of the urgent. And all that other stuff is the urgent stuff, but the important stuff is teaching and learning. So I love to ask leaders, what do you want to see every day in every classroom? Like the base level, not the stars and rainbows. Base level, what do you want to see in every classroom every day? And if we can get clear about that, then it's how will you know? What are you going to do to coach that, to give feedback on that? What are you going to do when teachers aren't meeting that expectation? What are you going to do when they are? So I think just getting clear on that builds some momentum for an individual or a leadership team to where they can say, okay, now what's the next thing we need to get clear about? Right. And maybe that's, our behavior tiers, so we're not sending the kid who doesn't bring a pencil to class to the office because that's a tier 1 behavior. Maybe that's the next thing to get clear. So really it's about systems, but I think getting clear step by step is where I would tell people to get started.
And that's such an easy thing to just stop and say, let's just talk about where we are on this and make sure we're all on the same page. I love that. Just getting clear. So, I'm thinking back though to your first answer that you said earlier too, and something that I hear often, and I can speak kind of on my own experience and struggle with it as well, is you said, knowing that it's not all on me and knowing that there are some things I'm going to have to delegate to others. Now, I know that there are so many leaders out there who struggle with that, of passing along that responsibility, whether it's they feel bad about overloading others or they just don't want, that's that whole mindset of, if I'm going to do it right, I might as well do it myself kind of mindset, which is easy to have in the classroom when it's your space, it's not as easy to have that mindset as an administrator. And so if you have somebody listening today thinking, okay, Darrin, I get all that, but like I struggle with like letting other people handle some things. And as a good leader, I know that that's part of being a good leader. How do I give up some control? What would you say?
Yeah. Well, I think you make such an excellent point. I think, and I'll build on what you said. I think there's a couple other reasons that leaders do this. Sometimes it's they think they have to prove something. And it might be I have to prove to myself I'm worthy of this job, or maybe it's I want to prove my superintendent right, or I want to prove that person who said it shouldn't be me wrong. There's all of these different reasons why that's what we do, why we take everything on. But and I'll be honest with you, I had an administrator, an elementary principal who I'm still working with, but a couple of years ago, the first time that I was in her office, I'll tell you this quick story and then get to what I would advise. But I'm in her office and she's talking about all the things about her school. And Todd, over in the corner, there was a T-shirt press. And it just kept catching my eye. And then finally I asked her, I said, why is there a T-shirt press in your office? I'm just curious. And she said, well, we have a house program here. And so each kid gets their own, special T-shirt and so forth. And she said, I didn't want to put that on my secretary. So I do the T-shirts. And I about flipped out. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're like got big eye right there. I was the same way. I'm like, oh, come on. But that's what happens. We're afraid to ask, or we don't want to put that on them. We don't want to make them, have them feel inconvenienced. The reality is almost everyone wants you to turn those things over to them. I mean, most people will say things like, people who do what we're talking about will say, I don't want to be a micromanager, but if you've ever said that, you're a micromanager, whether you mean to be or not. Right. And so, number one, be willing to allow others to one, do their job, but you don't just turn it over to them and then just hope that it works. Instead, take that attitude of being curious and just ask them questions. How might you do this? Tell me what you think your process might look like. So you're coaching them through what you want them to do instead of just giving it to them. Because you're right. People don't want to let go of control. But if I'm asking a lot of questions of you along the way, in a way, I'm not giving up that control. I'm finding out from you along the way. How are we going to proceed, as we go? But the most important piece here is you have to look at what are the things that you as the building principal only can do. Because again, I said earlier, there are certain things that you can do as the building principal that nobody else can. And there's a whole lot of other things that you could, but you could give to someone else. And what really moves the needle in your school is not you making T-shirts for the houses. It's you being in the classroom, coaching teachers, building relationships with your instructional staff, with your students, telling the story of to the community of your school. That's the work that you as the principal can do, and typically only you can do. Right. So lean on that and just be real curious and supportive as you let go of those other pieces would be what I would advise.
I love that. So, I'm also thinking about, I know throughout your career, but also in supporting other leaders, you see a lot of common mistakes that people might make or pitfalls they fall into. And so what's something that you were like, okay, if I was to advise you not to do something, like this is my go-to because I see it done all the time, or I did it in experience, like talk to me about that, because I feel like we learn a lot from our mistakes. And I know that through your coaching and through your own experience, I know you've seen a lot of people fall on our faces as we work through things. So what would you say for that?
So, at the time we're recording this, we're at that point where school's going to be kicking off fairly soon. A couple of my schools on the East Coast that I support, their staff will be reporting next week. And so a lot of folks are just now stepping into these administrative roles. And, they say you don't get, but one opportunity to make a first impression. And I would tell you this. This is a mistake that I made. Don't immediately chase things that people bring to you right away, because odds are strong the first 5 in the door to see you will be the ones who drove the last person absolutely crazy with demands and complaining, and allow them to be heard. You know, people will tell you, listen, 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 don't make changes. I would tell you, don't be afraid to make changes. But just because somebody comes charging in the door and says, we have to do this, it doesn't mean you have to. You just listen and observe. Take it as opportunities for you to learn and figure out what's really going on in your campus. Whether you've been working on that campus or not, I think that's really important. I'll tell you what, I fell into this one, and somebody that I work with and support fell right into this. The first person through her door, we have to change the way we do recess. We have to completely restructure recess duty. And she set about doing all this work about recess duty, only to find out that that teacher had been written up for not showing up for recess duty the previous year. There was nothing wrong with the system. The teacher just didn't want to do recess duty. So slow down. Don't charge out the door as soon as somebody tells you something. Go do your homework. I think that's I can give you about 50, but that's the first one that jumps to mind.
I believe it. Well, but that's a great one. And I think that's hearing you say that, I'm like, yes, like it's resonating with me. I don't know if it would have been the first one that would have came to my mind, but hearing you say, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're like, that's so, yes. And that's sometimes something that we don't often think about. And so, Darrin, as we wrap this episode up, I'd love to know, one thing I always end with our guests on is this idea of, there's been some really good nuggets of wisdom in here, but if there was one thing you hope people hear that they walk away with, or that you want them to leave with, what's your one thing for listeners today?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say for listeners, and I hope that you take away, is the thing that I share all the time with people. As leaders, we have got to be clear. If we're going to lead a school, a department, a district, whatever it might be, we have to be so crystal clear on what it is that we expect of ourselves and of others, of what we see as possible, of what it is that we're looking for, and of what it is we're going to do in terms of how we're going to utilize our time. I just think for leaders, clarity is by far and away the most important tool that you have, because everything else that comes after that just gets muddled if you're not crystal clear on all of those things that I talked about. So yeah, if you can take away one thing from this, it's, as a leader, do everything you can to be crystal clear about everything that you're focused on.
I love it. Well, Darrin, if people want to stay connected with you or learn more from you or about the work you're doing, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. A couple of different ways. On social media, I'm at Darrin M. Peppard, literally everywhere. And on the World Wide Web, you can go drop by roadtoawesome.net and check us out. There's contact links on every single page on our website. So those are by far and away the easiest ways to get in touch with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Darrin, for being a guest on our TEPSA Talk podcast today. Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode. Make sure you join us next week for another all-new guest.